I'm Elizabeth at A Literary Princess, and today I am doing the 6 Tudor Queens book tag. This was created by Gem of Books, and I was tagged by Fraser Simons from Springboard Thoughts. Thank you so much for tagging me. I'm so excited to do this tag. I had a phase as a child where I was really into the Tudor Queens. I also had a phase where I was into the Romanoffs. I had lots of historical people phases because I'm weird, but I still really enjoy things about the Tudors. Six, the musical, is my jam. So this is gonna be a really fun tag and I'm so excited to do it. So let's jump in. First up, we've got Katherine of Aragon, Henry VIII's first wife, who he was married to for 24 years, I think, like really long time. And he had Mary with her, who became Queen Mary, and then he divorced her because she wasn't giving him any sons, and he wanted to marry Anne Boleyn. So for Katherine of Aragon, we have a book that was your first love. So I don't have the physical copy here because it's at my parents' house, along with most of my other children's literature. But the first book that I really fell in love with, it was actually a series, was The Unicorns of Balinor by Mary Stanton, I think it is. And I loved these. So I got them in first grade when I was 6 years old. And I don't remember if I bought the first one at the Scholastic Book Fair or if I went to the book fair, got the catalog and brought it home and my mom knew I would like it and ordered it for me. But it was from Scholastic, the Scholastic Book Fair. I remember we got them all from that. I remember going through the catalog and being like, oh mom, the Unicorns of Balinor, and ordering them. Good memories. Who else loved the Scholastic Book Fair as a child? Anyway, so this series follows a young girl named Ari, who is the princess of this land called Balinor, but she has been sent through portal to our world to be safe because there is some evil guy who took over Balinor. And I don't really remember the context of any of that. But so she has this horse Chase, who is actually a unicorn, and she goes back through the portal and is a princess and is going on all these adventures and trying to basically save Balinor. And I loved it. Oh my God, I was obsessed. I had pieces of it memorized. I reread it over and over again. I was just absolutely adored it. So this is what got me into fantasy literature, basically, because from here it moved on to like The Hobbit and Harry Potter and Chronicles of Narnia, but The Unicorns of Balinor for me is like really my first love. It's the first chapter book I remember reading, and I was able to read it on my own. I think my mom did read them to me quite frequently because that was like our routine, but I read them on my own as well. And again, read them over and over. And the saddest thing is that the series was never finished. It just stops. And I don't really remember how that book ends. My favorite was the 5th one. Put a picture of it up here. But yeah, so that was my first love. For books, anyway. Number 2, Anne Boleyn. So this is the first of our beheaded category for the wives. Anne Boleyn is, of course, the mother of Elizabeth I. And Henry decided he didn't want to be married to her anymore and accused her of adultery and incest and then chopped her head off. So she got the short end of the stick, rather. And so the prompt is a book with a manipulative character. And this is because Anne Boleyn is always portrayed as very manipulative. She kind of seduces her way into becoming queen. I don't know if that's necessarily a fair portrayal of her, considering she definitely, there was no incest going on. Whether there was even adultery going on is questionable. But yeah, so. Book with a manipulative character, I chose Affinity by Sarah Waters. So this deals with a young woman who is I think, upper class Victorian society, and she starts going to visit this woman's prison where she meets Selina Dawes, who was a spiritualist who I think has been convicted of murder. It's been a while since I read this. And our main character, whose name I straight up can't remember. Yeah. I straight up have no idea what our main character's name is, and it's not on the back of the book. So that doesn't help me. But the manipulative character I'm talking about is Selina, and I'm not gonna say anything more because that would ruin the book, first of all. But this is so fascinating because throughout you're like, is the spiritualism stuff real? Is it all a hoax? Oh my God. So yeah, it's so interesting. And yes, Selina is very manipulative. And as most Sarah Waters books, this does feature lesbian romance, and it's beautifully written and wonderfully plotted and just really well researched. And I love Sarah Waters, so you should go read her. All right, prompt 3. So our third wife, Jane Seymour, she is the one to give Henry his son, Edward? He died young. No one ever talks about him. But anyway, Jane Seymour gave birth and then died shortly thereafter. And she's always considered the one that he loved, and he's buried next to her, but that's really just because she had a son, I think. But anyway, so this prompt is a book that delivered what you wanted. Get it? Because she gave him the son that he wanted. I love these prompts, by the way. A+ to Gem of Books for these prompts. They're great. Anyway, so a book that gave me exactly what I wanted was Evelina by Frances Burney. So she published this in 1778, and she was a big influence on Jane Austen. So when I was picking this up, I was like, I want more Jane Austen. But there's no more Jane Austen. I've read all the Jane Austen, but I want more Jane Austen. And so people had recommended Evelina, saw it in a thrift shop, picked it up, and oh gosh, it delivers. It's so good. So very much the same type of deal as Jane Austen's, dealing with a young woman being introduced to society and kind of navigating it, and marriage market and all of this. And it's just funny. It's social satire, much like Austen. And I mean, I was rolling on the floor laughing at this. This was so funny. Even funnier than Austen, I would say. So yeah, it gave me exactly what I wanted. I was very happy, and I recommend it to a lot of people. And I can't wait to read more from Frances Burney because she's fun. All right, number 4 is Anne of Cleaves. So this was our second divorced wife. The story goes that Henry saw her portrait, fell in love with her because she was so beautiful, and then brought her over from Germany to marry her, and she looked nothing like the portrait, and so he divorced her. But honestly, she made out pretty good. Of any of these wives, she got like her own castle, she got a pretty good amount of money, and they remained friends. Like, she would go to court and hang out with him, basically. So it was like a very amicable divorce, unlike with Katherine of Aragon. So the prompt for Anne of Cleves is a book that wasn't what you expected, and I actually don't have a physical book for this, but I will put up a picture right here. So this was books promiscuously read, Reading as a Way of Life by Heather Cass White. So I got this as an ARC off of NetGalley, and it was marketed as a memoir/autobiography. And reading the description and the title, I thought it was going to be a memoir that kind of uses literature as a way to tell the author's life story. So kind of like How to Be a Heroine by, can't remember the author's name, or My Life in Middlemarch, I think, uses that idea. Also can't remember that author's name, and I don't have them in front of me. But So that's what I walked into this expecting. And I'm like geared up. I like memoirs. I enjoy them, especially if they're literature related. And what I got was not that. So this is more of a, what is this? There's academic aspects to this, but it's not, the author doesn't talk about her personal life at all. It's very like, why do we as a human race read and what do we get out of it? And it starts off with these horrific, like kind of pithy little things like reading is blah, blah, blah. You know what? Hold on. I'm gonna pull it up. I'll be right back. Okay. I'm back and I have it pulled up. So these are just like the first few. So it would be like a statement and then a little paragraph about it, and she called them propositions. So reading creates minds in its image. And I'm just gonna read the statements. I'm not reading the paragraphs. Nobody's got time for that. Readers should read. A reader should read every day. We read elsewhere. Why not be alone together? Reading will not save us. And I was just like, excuse me? Because first of all, don't tell me what to do. But also I was like, oh my God, is the whole book gonna be this? Because I can't do that. So luckily it's not. So after this propositions section, she moves into like some more academic stuff and some readings of books that feature reading. I think Middlemarch is in there. I don't actually remember. But it was just not what I wanted and not what I thought I was picking up, because NetGalley clearly mislabeled it. It was not a memoir or an autobiography at all. So I was very much not pleased. And it's not really the book's fault. If I'd known what I was getting into, I might have enjoyed it more. But I'm opening with those propositions. I was like, no, don't tell me what to do. Get out of here. Leave me alone. So yeah, that did not work for me, and it was definitely not what I expected. All right, prompt number 5. Katherine Howard, who is our second beheaded wife. And I think like his shortest marriage, maybe Anne of Cleaves was, I don't know. It went quick. I think she was also accused of adultery. I see a pattern. Anyway, the prompt is a book that irritated you. Which, poor Katherine Howard. You know what? She was a literal child when Henry married her, and he was like an old man, or at least like a middle-aged man, and not well. And she was just this literal child. And I think Katherine Howard gets way more hate than she should, because she was in a bad situation. But anyway, a book that irritated me. And anybody who's been watching the channel for a while might be able to guess what's coming up, because I read this book just a few months ago, although it kind of seems like a lifetime ago now. But this is Disorientation by Elaine Shea Chu. So I got this as an ARC from NetGalley again. And the premise of this is something that I should really like. It's dealing with a woman, Ingrid, who is finishing up her PhD in Asian American Studies. Maybe it was just Asian Studies. I don't remember. But she's writing about this poet who is a Chinese poet. And then in the archives, she discovers something about him that's just like gonna change scholarship on him forever. And I was like, oh wow, this is really great. I love reading books about people in grad school. I love reading books about people working with literature. This is gonna be awesome. Ingrid Yang is the most annoying protagonist I have ever had the displeasure of dealing with. And I've like dealt with some pretty annoying main characters before and been like, okay, that's, it's fine. like the girl from Bunny by Mona Awad? I don't know how to pronounce her last name, but anyway, she's annoying, but the book is still really good. Ingrid, oh my God, I couldn't stand her. And the more the book went on, the more irritated I got. Not just with her, but with the whole book, because it just kept getting more and more ridiculous, and people kept acting more and more like caricatures. Ingrid was a freaking idiot. Like, she acted like a middle school girl would. Like, I was like, this woman is 30 or almost 30, and she's acting like this. She like doesn't know how to hold a conversation with a person, like just a normal conversation. It was astounding. And she's supposed to be in a PhD program. She's supposed to be a scholar. And she didn't really seem to know anything about literature either. Which was like, you got your undergrad in literature. You wanted to work with modernist poets, and now you're doing, it was East Asian studies, that's what it was. And now you're doing East Asian studies working with a poet, but you don't really appear to know anything about literature or how to act like a human or anything. It was astonishing. And I was just so irritated. I was so sick of it. It took me 59 days to read it because I was just so annoyed I didn't want to pick it up. But yeah, so that was a book that irritated me. And I think it's my March wrap up that you can go check out if you want to hear anything more about it. But yeah, I'm not gonna continue ranting about it. Even though I kind of want to, but I'm not gonna. All right, so prompt number 6 is Katherine Parr. This is our final wife. She is the one who survived, meaning that Henry died before he could divorce her or behead her. Good for her. Yay. And so this prompt is a book published after the death of the author. So there were a lot that I could choose from for here, but I chose to go with The Professor by Charlotte Bronte, mainly because just the story behind this is so funny to me, and like funny, kind of sad funny, not really haha funny. But so The Professor is actually the first book that Charlotte Bronte wrote. It deals with this man named William Crimsworth who goes to Brussels and falls in love with a girl who's a teacher, yada yada. There's a lot of aspects that we later see in VIII in here. So this is what Charlotte Bronte originally sent out along with Wuthering Heights and Agnes Grey to try to get published. And oh my God, I can't think of the name of her publisher, and I should know this. I don't remember it. Anyway, but so they sent it back to her. They rejected it, but they said, hey, we would be interested in seeing something else from you. And I mean, this book got rejected basically everywhere. Like, she sent this out everywhere and it got rejected everywhere. But William Smith Elder and Co, maybe? I think it's Smith. I don't remember. Anyway, but they were like, hey, we don't want this, but we'd be interested in seeing more from you. So she wrote Jane Eyre and sent it out, and of course, the rest is history. But so after Jane Eyre, they were like, okay, we want to publish something else. She was like, well, how about The Professor? They were like, no. Charlotte, no. She was like, well, okay. So then she started writing Shirley. And then, of course, her brother died, her sisters died, and like all this tragedy hit, and she was having a hard time writing. She was like, can we just publish The Professor? And they're like, Charlotte, no, we can't. She's like, okay, fine. So she finished Shirley, and started VIII, and I can't remember if there was another round of can we publish The Professor. I think there might have been. And they were just like, no, Charlotte, we're not publishing The Professor. And so she wrote VIII, which incorporated a lot of aspects of The Professor, but took on a female main character. And even though VIII's not my favorite, it's definitely better than The Professor. Like, I'm not gonna lie, this book's pretty boring, but I'm talking about it because I just find the story behind it so amusing. And like, sad amusing, not funny, haha, amusing. And so then she published VIII, and she started another book, and then she got sick and she passed away. And her husband, Arthur Bell Nichols, was like, we should publish The Professor. And the publishers were like, well, maybe if we edit it a bit. And Arthur Bell Nichols was like, no, I will take care of all of that. And they were like, oh no. But they did eventually publish it after her death. And I don't know, just, she tried so hard through her life to get this published. And it just kind of makes me laugh in like a really sad way. So it was published after her death. And I mean, there's a reason that they didn't want to publish it. It's pretty boring. But hey, she tried. And it's an important piece of literature to see how she developed as a writer, because you can see things from Jane Eyre and Shirley and definitely VIII. So it's interesting to see how she developed. But is it a great book? Really? All right, and then the last prompt is Henry VIII himself. The prompt is a chunky book that you hated. Because he was a large man and he was obviously a jerk because he murdered multiple women and divorced the others. And was just generally unpleasant and constantly like disinheriting his children except for his beloved son. And yeah, he's a jerk. He sucks. Anyway, chunky book that I hated. So I was looking through all of my books on Goodreads. I was like, okay, chunky book that I hated. And I like couldn't find one that I actually hated. So generally, I kind of like the chunkier books that I read. I don't know if it's because I go for ones that I know I'm going to like because I'm not wasting 800 pages of my life reading something I'm going to absolutely hate. But like most I could find was like kind of a mild annoyance, but I liked parts of it. So I'm going to talk about two to make up for not having one that I absolutely hated. So the first one I read this year, and this is The Second Sex by Simone de Beauvoir. I read this for my feminist theory exam list, and it's one of the quintessential works of feminist literature. It was originally published in French and has been translated into English. And it's like 800 pages. And I don't think it needed to be 800 pages. But there are some great ideas in here, but it's very dense, and I had a very difficult time reading it. And like I didn't enjoy it. I gave it 2.5 stars ultimately, so it's not like I hated it, but didn't like it by any stretch of the imagination. It had some great moments. I also felt she relied way too much on Sigmund Freud, who I do hate, hence why I've never read any of his books. Otherwise, maybe they'd be on here. I don't know how long they are. Anyway, so yeah, didn't like this that much. Too much Freud, writing too dense, but some good ideas. All right, and so then this last one I have to talk about is a novel, and I gave this 3 stars, and I liked a lot of parts of it, but I also had a lot of issues with it because this is Middlemarch by George Eliot, and you probably all know by now that I have some issues with George Eliot. But again, 800 pages. Is this 800 plus pages? It's 800 plus pages. Ma'am, it did not need to be that long. So my problem with this is that it's basically 2 books smushed into one, and that's literally how she wrote it. It originally started as the story Middlemarch, about a town called Middlemarch, and then this other story called Dorothea Brooke that was about Dorothea Brooke, and she decided to combine them, and I don't like it. I don't like it. I would much rather have just focused on the stories of our 3 main female characters and left out all of the shit about the town and the politics and the reform and all that. I do not care. It made it a real slog. So I definitely didn't hate it. There's parts of it I liked, but it was on my least favorite books of the list last year because I had issues with it. Now, I am reading Daniel Deronda currently, which kind of has a similar issue of feeling like it's two stories that she smushed together to make into one stupidly long book. But I'm liking Daniel Deronda much more. And I think that and I'm reading it in a much faster pace than I read Middlemarch. I think if I went back and read Middlemarch at a faster pace, I might enjoy it more. So I'm gonna try that someday, but not anytime soon. So yeah, I didn't hate it, but I didn't really like it either. And she's chunky. My God, she's chunky. It could have been 2 400-page novels. And that is a common problem with George Eliot that I have. Anyway, so that is the 6 Tudor Queens book tag. Again, thank you so much to Fraser Simons for tagging me. Thank you to Gem of Books for creating the tag. I'm not going to tag anyone, but if you would like to, please consider yourself tagged by me. It has been great chatting with you all. I will see you soon. Bye.